Hi, this is Rich Harrington, and you're listening to Photofocus episode 109. And joining me as co-host today is Scott Bourne.
Hey, Rich. Love being on this side of the microphone with you. How are you doing?
Good to talk to you again. We actually just bumped into each other at NAB a few times out in Vegas last week.
Yeah, as in we taught two classes together, and we're stuck in a room for an hour and a half at a time with each other. But that was fun.
Yeah, it was interesting. We had a chance to talk about time-lapse to some folks as well as podcasting, both of which sort of fit into what we're doing today. I think it was interesting to me seeing how interesting time-lapse was to a mostly video-centric audience. It was a well-attended session. We had sold out of a pre-conference trip of people going out to Valley of Fire, so I guess if it shows anything, between the fact that people are interested in it, camera manufacturers are putting new capabilities right in the cameras, seems like time-lapse might be making a resurgence or at least going mainstream.
Well, I think it's more that it's going mainstream. People are starting to understand that you're going to probably have a multimedia presentation of your photography, meaning you're going to have some stills, you're going to have a slideshow, maybe you're going to drop in some video, and that includes a time lapse. It's the old-fashioned, 3-deck Kodak carousel slideshow. It looks a little boring these days. So time lapse, you can draw. It's amazing. You can do a 5-minute slideshow, and you drop in 15 seconds in time lapse somewhere in there, and all of a sudden you get the audience to wake up, and they're like, "Ooh, what is this?"
Yeah, I think it is really engaging. It is getting easier and easier to do. I think, software tools are coming out that make it, fun and simple. We're seeing even solutions for people to dabble right on their phones or iPads, things like iStop motion, so you can record right to the iPad. It looks interesting. And I think, if you're looking for a new hobby or you want to sort of experiment this, adding on to photography, it's not that hard. For many folks like Nikon shooters, they already have the intervalometer built right into the camera. And I actually discovered that some Canon owners were able to sort of hack their cameras with the Magic Lantern firmware and use the built-in intervalometer function as well.
Well, on top of that, there are, I think, 6 now, if I've got it right, Kickstarter projects where people are trying to get apps built that will let your iPhone control any of these DSLRs, Canon, Nikon, whatever. So I don't think we're far from that. One thing that happened at the conference when you and I spoke on time-lapse that you're probably not aware of, because you were speaking on one side of the podium afterwards and I was speaking on the other, and a guy came up to me, and your revelation that you could do motion in post in time-lapse, really, the guy came up and said, "Man, that was worth going to this class for." He goes, "I thought you had to have a slider or a dolly or something in the field to do that. But why don't you spend 15 seconds telling people what tools they need to be able to add motion to their time-lapse in post, even if they shot locked down on a tripod?"
Well, a lot of folks forget that you have a lot of resolution in those stills, and when you're delivering time-lapse, you're usually going towards just an HD video format, which is really only about a 2-megapixel image. So you've got a lot of extra pixels. So all you're really doing is the equivalent of what you might think of in iMovie, like a Ken Burns effect, where you're putting pan and scan or zoom on it. My favorite tool of choice is After Effects, which will be coming bundled with the Creative Cloud from Adobe here for most users to start getting easy access. But you can do this in other tools too, right in Premiere, Final Cut. Lots of tools will support what's generally called keyframing, and all you're doing is you set a start and an end position, and then the computer interpolates in between, or just basically moves from point A to point B. And because you have such a high resolution movie, this is really easy to do. And there's little refinements. We've posted some fun tutorials over at 3exposure.com, the number 3exposure.com. But it's actually really fun and easy, and it's just sort of a combination of techniques like documentary filmmaking and time-lapse merged together.
Well, let's talk more about some of the stuff we saw at NAB. Gear-wise, I got to tell you, the Canon booth was 300 people deep.
It was huge. I don't think I've seen a bigger booth at all of NAB except back in the day when Apple was just king. I mean, that was the biggest booth I've ever seen. And it was filled with their cameras, with their lenses on professional cameras. And you're right. I mean, it was just a zoo of people being interested. Canon was really rocking the broadcast show, both showing still cameras and video cameras. And I think what was really amazing to me was how many people were into photography at a video conference. It really seemed that the world of journalism, or the DSLR video revolution, as well as just the web content creators who are doing video and stills, were really in effect. It was a great show for them. Even
I want to say that you know, I've been to every photo show I think on the planet, and this may be the largest Canon booth I've seen at any of them.
Yeah, it was a beautiful booth filled with people, filled with products. I know that you got a chance to talk to Chuck Westfall a little bit about some of the new cameras coming out. And yeah, it was amazing. There was just so much stuff there. And talk about energy. I mean, Canon definitely showed up in force and seemed to be making a strong statement that they're a company to reckon with.
Yeah, meanwhile, over at the Nikon booth, they had an 8x10 piece of paper that said, "We shoot video too."
Yeah, Nikon's booth was smaller. Although, to be actually honest, Nikon's booth was bigger and busier than a couple of major broadcaster camera things.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Nikon, I will say this. I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the show, but I do believe that we're close enough parity-wise between the Nikon and the Canon on the video side that if you have a strong preference for one brand or the other, you're probably okay shooting it now. Because if you're shooting DSLR video, that means you're probably not shooting for broadcast. So it's not a big deal. The Nikon video has gotten a lot better. The D4, which I use extensively in Alaska, has great video. I did not use my D800 extensively. I put it in the box after 20 minutes and sent it back. But you have stronger opinions about the D800, so I'll let you talk about it, and particularly its video capabilities.
Well, I had a chance to play with it when I was out in Vegas. I did some time-lapse shooting, I did some still shooting, and I did some video shooting, and I was quite happy with it across the board. The image quality was great. You know, it really was nice to have. It was great at low light performance. You know, early Nikon cameras suffered from using an ancient codec of photo JPEG, which just made noisy, grainy video that looked terrible. And then by the time they got around to the D7000, they had fixed that. But this goes a step further. It's a clean image, it's higher data rate, longer record times, and then some video-specific features like the ability to record the video out the HDMI port. It really stood out. I mean, for Nikon, NAB wasn't a very big show for them. But if, you know, I'm quite happy. I actually think, in talking to Canon, that if you are equally interested in shooting video and stills, that Nikon may have taken the lead and balance for features there. Although the 5D Mark III is a beautiful camera too.
I do want to say this. I want to ask you about the 32 people that followed you everywhere you went with your D800. Each one of them holding a 4 terabyte drive in order to handle all the files coming off of that huge camera.
I did shoot raw time-lapse on it, and I was able to shoot successfully, and I was happy. It definitely was a big file. That is something to think about. I mean,
what comes after terabytes again?
Maybe a zettabyte? No.
I think we're looking at zettabyte. If you're going to buy a D800, you need to have zettabyte storage, folks, because these raw files start at 40 megabytes, and you know, if you're using a D700 in particular, this is going to be a shock, because you're going to need 3 times the memory cards. You're going to need 3 times the battery life. You're going to need 3 times the computer and 3 times the storage. And you're going to spend most of the rest of your life waiting for that little thing to spin while the files import. You're going to actually age during the time that these files import. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they're big, beefy files, and you know that's a choice to make. I mean, some people want that resolution. You know, I'm still experimenting with it. Right now, Aperture can open the files, Lightroom 4 can open the files, and that's about it. You know, so you can dally with them. I mean, there's a lot of resolution there, and I guess
I just want to ask you, Rich, how many billboards have you shot for in your career?
I'll tell you, though, I did some panoramas and I stitched them, and they were beautiful. I could see them being large format prints that I hang on the wall.
Yeah. Okay, my point being, though, is how many people in our audience do you think need that kind of resolution? Need it?
Need? Not that many. The ability that, I mean, you know.
Here's the thing. I wish
they would
have kept it.
I would challenge back that I think a lot of people, once they go through, will start to just down convert the RAWs to the target size they want. But you would say everybody should keep everything they shoot.
Now, here's the thing, though. I get this argument all the time about the D800, and people say, "Oh, you're a Canon fanboy." I
No.
bought 5D3s and 5D3Ss. I don't think that qualifies me as a Canon fanboy, but when I don't like something, I get a right to say it. And I would have preferred they stuck with the D700 sensor and done all the other improvements. But here's the thing. If you're going to buy a D800, and I see all the guys come at me on the forum go, yeah, but you can downsize that RAW file, and yeah,
Right.
you can make it the size of, oh yeah, a D7000, which cost $2,000 less. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Let's buy a $3,000 camera, turn it off so that it only makes the $1,000 camera format size, but pay the extra $2,000 anyway.
I think just like this camera, and I think you would actually agree that Canon was guilty of this too. I think both Nikon, Canon, and if not all camera manufacturers are kind of milking the situation. They're looking to come up with a way to put a little extra cash in the coffers. A lot of them were hard hit by natural disaster, factories damaged, and they all seem to be using this as an opportunity to get more equipment, raise the prices, raise the features, have some more expensive models.
1995 called and wants its marketing scheme back.
I know. I'm not saying it's right. I would just counter back that. Why does the 5D Mark III cost that much more than the 5D Mark II? What do they do to make it worth it?
Listen, it's got nothing to do with file size. It's got to do with the fact that there's an old dog. Why does a dog, what? Well, because he can. Well, that's
Right.
the reason they raised the price. I've complained very loudly about the 5D Mark III price increase. I've complained very loudly about the $6,800 price point on the 1DX. It's going to put both cameras out of reach for people. But I will say this. I don't think people who think it through are going to switch to the D800 over the 5D Mark III for that $500 difference, because they're going to spend $600 on new memory cards, hard drives, and faster computers. So they're going to come out on the wrong side of that on the back end. Let's quit talking about this because we're going to spend the whole show on it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think one of the things to talk about, since we touched on it, is processing software. Adobe announced on Monday the Creative Cloud pricing and the Photoshop CS6 availability. So we'll have the exact dates and details posted on Photofocus site. It's just getting announced. But one of the things that did come out was sort of a new aggressive pricing model that said, okay, if you're an individual user, it's $49 a month for all the Adobe software. And if you want to have team collaboration, it's $69 a month. Now that's with an annual agreement, but that's kind of a price lowering. And it seems to me like they're trying to make it easier for people to get in.
Now that includes the cloud service.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of, it includes all the apps. So like the tablet apps, including Photoshop Touch and the collaboration apps. It includes online backup and all sorts of things, fonts, the ability to publish. If you want to build a photo portfolio in InDesign and publish it as an iPad app, it includes that. So you can actually do app publishing now. And I think the one thing that confuses people is they hear cloud, and it's still the same software. It just has some cloud collaboration features. So the software still installs on your machine and runs locally. There's just cloud-based apps and some other services that use the cloud for backup and collaboration that are thrown into.
Now, do you have to use their cloud services?
No, they'll still sell standalone software with upgrades, and it's all pretty straightforward. So just like before, you can upgrade your software. You could buy the box version. The big change that Adobe did say is if you are a CS3 or a CS4 customer, you only have until the end of this year to upgrade to CS6. So they're sort of implementing a one version back policy, which is a lot like what Macromedia used to have. That's going to piss a lot of people off, but they're trying to get everybody on the same page and simplify what they have to support and how many versions back they have to provide tech support for.
And it looks like they want to make a clean break with some of those really ancient versions, which they tried to stay with for decades, and you got to hat tip to them for that. But come on, it's a new day, and I got to say, every time there's an upgrade, I get a million emails. Should I upgrade to this Photoshop or should I wait for the next one? I can tell you, just playing with the beta for a couple of weeks, CS6 is a must-have upgrade. There are so many new features, Rich. Content-aware move is one of my favorite. The ability to edit video. Those of you that say you don't want to do video, well, someday you're going to probably end up doing it. And you can do it here without a video editing degree. the speed, the overall peppiness. What's the name of that engine that they use again?
It's the Mercury engine, and yeah,
The Mercury engine.
if
Yeah.
you've got enough RAM and a halfway decent graphics card, you get great performance. My favorite thing that I was just falling in love with over the last week was using the adaptive wide angle correction. So I took a lot of the
Yeah.
panoramics I shot and just drew a couple of lines, and all of a sudden, all the distortion's gone. It's like wide angle correction, except you just have to be able to draw a straight line, and it fixes it.
So if you cannot afford a 14 millimeter rectilinear corrected Canon lens, you can just do it in Photoshop. Yeah, the new Photoshop, it's brilliant. The interface has changed. It's sleeker. It's more powerful. This is just an absolute no-brainer. Now, do you think we'll see something similar in the the reduced price version that we always get? The stripped down Photoshop, so to speak.
Well, Photoshop Elements has been out for a little while, and they did streamline that a bit already. I'm sure some of this will ripple across. When you look at it, the big thing, people say, why Photoshop Elements versus Photoshop? Photoshop really has a lot of professional features for things like CMYK printing, but probably the biggest thing that I love is the automation features. So, while we have photo merge inside of Elements and we have some of that stuff, I don't think you're going to see the video editing or some of the adaptive wide angle or the content, all the content aware move tools for probably a short while. They usually have a 1 to 2 year delay before those features move across, and not all of them ever make the jump either. So Adobe seems aggressive. You notice when Lightroom came out, they lowered the price on the Lightroom upgrade. I think what we're seeing is just sort of lower prices across the board, and they're trying to push people to say, okay, upgrade with us regularly, and it'll just make it easier. We'll give you more features, and we're going to have this. A lot of people get pissed off, though. They always grumble, oh, I wish they wouldn't focus just on features. Well, the biggest feature is the speed, as you said, and I'm just amazed on how much faster it is on the same hardware. So they really did a nice job.
Yeah. Okay, what else do we got on the agenda?
Well, I think before we go too much further, we should take a second just to thank some of our sponsors. Scott, do you want to?
I think that's a wonderful idea. I want to really thank SmugMug. They've been with us a long time. If you're looking to sell your photography, SmugMug is the way to do it. SmugMug Pro. If you just want to show your stuff on the web, that's the way to do it. Or host your video, whatever you want. They've got it at smugmug.com. You can go to that URL, or you can click the SmugMug logo on our home pages, and which is at photofocus.com, by the way. Or you can go check out Borrow Lenses, who also has a banner ad on the Photofocus homepage. And they have all the new video gear, all the new stuff we saw at NAB that's available, Rich, like the C300. They got it. And when you're talking $16,000 cameras, believe me, that's a puppy you want to rent. They've got all the stuff that goes with it, the monitors, the tripods, the fluid heads. So they're not just into photo, but they do have all the newest lenses for photo. They have the 5D Mark III, they have the D800, and they have the D4. As soon as the 1DX comes out, they'll have that. They'll have some of the new Canon 600 flashes. So check out borrowlenses.com. Probably also should mention that all this stuff is available 7 days a week at photofocus.com.
Yep. And one of the other things that's new that's coming out is larger capacity hard drives. So I heard inklings of 4 terabyte drives coming out, more talk, and I saw a lot more Thunderbolt
I bet
devices.
you heard most of that in the Nikon booth, didn't you?
I thought you said we were putting that topic aside.
Oh, sorry. You put a softball right over the middle of the plate. I had to swing.
That's fine.
Yeah, 4 terabyte drives, which means finally that 2 and 3 terabyte drives are safe.
Yeah, and will be much cheaper too, which is good. So people definitely have a lot more storage options coming out. I think one of the things that confused folks, I swung by some storage booths. People seemed really perplexed by the ideas of all these different levels of RAID and speed and devices. One of the things that really became clear to me as I talked to folks is that 2 standards are emerging. So if you're going forward and you're looking at new computers, USB 3 seems to really be getting momentum. And then on the Mac side is Thunderbolt. Although some PC manufacturers are optimistic that Thunderbolt will become widely available on the PC platform as they start to get some more technology freed up in June. Scott, you played with both technologies. What are you using, for your backup?
Well, in my real world, everyday use in the studio, I'm a Thunderbolt boy. And I got to tell you, I got the Pegasus R6, which is 12 terabytes, 10 of which are accessible, 2 are for redundancy. And that puppy is fast. fast.
Right.
Fast. It is really fast. In fact, you can dump a CD's worth of material in 3.4 seconds. It's completely spoiled me. I mean, it literally is so fast that when you use like a MacBook Air, now a fully loaded MacBook Air, and a Thunderbolt drive, you can get an aperture experience that is as good as anything we had back in the day. We don't quite have the graphic card yet, which is too bad because the GPU is so important in aperture, but we got everything else. And I like these things so much. I've purchased multiple ones. We're using them for backups. For our backups, you can daisy chain them. Thunderbolt is really cool. Now, I would like to see it more widely adopted.
Yeah, and a lot of that is that there's sort of been a shortage on some of the equipment and the gear. But in talking to folks at NAB, yeah, obviously video people chew through a lot of storage. There's definitely more coming quickly. And so I stopped by booths from lots of different manufacturers, and just
Thunderbolt SSD.
yeah, and lots more stuff coming, and so that's definitely catching up. Although on a related note, a pricey but super cool thing I saw, if you've got a tower, did you see the Fusion IO stuff? It's pretty crazy stuff. It's basically a PCI card that you put in your tower, and it gives you 400 gigabytes or so of faster than SSD internal storage. So it's basically as fast as RAM. So it's like a 400 gigabyte RAM upgrade for a scratch disk. So all that photo work just flies.
Cool. Well, the thing that I want to see that I did not ever hear anybody talk about, and maybe can't happen technically, I don't know, but I'd sure like to see a Thunderbolt card reader.
Yeah, there's no reason why that can't happen, and that would certainly help with data transfer speed. The big thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Thunderbolt is not something you're going to be able to get like an expansion card to put into your existing computer. So if you're waiting for Thunderbolt and you're thinking about buying a machine now, if you really want that, you're going to have to wait. Now, USB 3, on the other hand, is an available technology, not as fast as Thunderbolt, but sort of a fallback position. So I think, a lot of people are thinking about getting new computers. The big thing that I picked up on is that June is going to be a really good time to shop for new computers if you're wanting the top end performance. Although a lot of new machines are coming out right now too, that seems to be the date that Intel is releasing new hardware and new chipsets that'll power those fast computers.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen to the Mac line. I mean, I think the whole world is just getting smaller. I mean, the smartphones, are sort of taking over where the tablets were. The tablets are taking over where the laptops were. The laptops are taking over where the desktops were, which means the desktops are going away.
Yeah, I think that's very realistic. I was in a Mac store the other day and walked past the area where that used to be all the iMacs. I had my son with me and I was picking up a machine that I had brought in for repair. And there used to be a giant table filled with iMacs with kids' software and educational software. And it was swapped out for a table full of iPads with education apps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the tablets are ruling. And I got to say, I have had every MacBook Air, but this new one, Rich, it's not on the same level, especially paired with something like the Thunderbolt port driven Pegasus R6. I got one with 1.8 gigahertz Intel Core i7, which is, when I bought it, the fastest chip you could buy. And I got 4 gigahertz of RAM. I mean, gigabytes of RAM at 1333 megahertz DDR3 RAM. Now, on the day I bought this was the most expensive MacBook Air you could buy, but something about it, it's very usable for a lot of photo work.
Yeah, and that seems to be the trend we're getting at, is machines with long battery life, really lightweight. So, I imagine you could actually toss that MacBook Air in a lightweight camera bag over your shoulder. It doesn't require a separate bag that you lug
No,
around.
yeah. See, I used to use the 17-inch MacBook Pro, which weighed a ton, didn't fit in any bags, had to be carried in a separate bag, and I've chucked it. I'm just using the MacBook Air, and I'm not. I mean, all I use the MacBook Air for in the field is just to, I import images, look at them, and see if I'm going the right direction. Maybe take a couple out and process them and send them up on a blog until I get back home, where I use the most powerful iMac in the world to do my editing. But the MacBook Air in the field is plenty fast enough, and I I am bringing portable drives, of course, because there's not a lot of storage on the MacBook Air. But I'd like to see something in the form of a 2 terabyte mini Thunderbolt portable drive.
I
You know,
uh,
this
I s-
tiny, tiny ones.
I saw something that looks interesting. It's not coming out yet, but I did see something that will be coming out later this summer that was basically 4 SSDs rated together for performance, but I'm not allowed to say more, but it looked really cool and it was in a
Well,
portable case.
we saw that last year at NEB too, so that's been coming a long time. I saw the same thing. It still isn't out, but when that does happen, I tell you that'll be cool. And I really think that we're gonna see that take off. Now USB 3, on the other hand, gonna also have very wide adoption right off the bat and very fast. So if you have USB 3, you're gonna be fine. You don't really need the greatest of everything. In fact, this week I took time, Rich, on the off days of NAB to post some images that I shot way back in the day with like a Canon D1 or 1D, I mean.
Did you have to blow dust off of them?
No, but I mean, it was like, that was the best camera you could buy in the day, and the pictures looked great. And if you still had that camera, the pictures would still look great. And we're talking about cameras there were 6 megapixel cameras, 3 megapixel cameras even, and we sold images. They look great. And I know that when there's all these new cameras, like right now, we got the D4, the 5D Mark III, the D800. That puts a lot of pressure on people, particularly the newbies. They feel like, oh, I gotta upgrade. But I could buy the same pen that Shakespeare uses, and I won't write like him. I can buy the same piano Mozart plays, and I won't play like him. And I can buy the same clubs Tiger Woods hits, and I won't hit like him. So don't worry about that. Get to know the camera you have now. Don't feel like you've got to buy all these new cameras. Although, if you've got the money, why not?
Well, I had a harsh reality check at the show. One of the folks that was out with me while we were shooting, I had a workshop on time lapse and panoramic just before NAB, and I had a friend out who was videotaping stuff for us, just getting behind the scenes footage to post. And he was just shooting on his iPhone. And I just logged in today to Facebook, saw about 50 pictures he had taken. And had he not told me that they were taken on an iPhone 4, I would have had no idea. They looked solid. The color was beautiful, brought the desert color out. He did minimal processing just in the phone. A new version of Snapseed came out recently, one of my favorite tools from Nick. It's amazing at how this portable studio. And while we were out there shooting and everyone was shooting time lapse or panorama, I swear 2 out of 3 photographers also had their iPhone out and were taking pictures while they were there, posting to social media during the shoot, putting up updates. Oh, this is a great location. Look at this, as well as just capturing extra angles. And it was amazing at how many people were dual shooting equally between their two devices.
Well, I was making pictures with my iPhone the other day that I was posting online, and people were like, "Wow, did you do that on the 5D Mark III?" No, it came off of the iPhone, kids. And I shot video in Alaska with the iPhone just so people could have an understanding of the experience of how close the eagles were to me, and showed it to my friends, and they couldn't believe the quality of the video on the iPhone 4S. So all of these things have gotten better than anything we had 25 years ago. So it's time to concentrate on the other stuff. Before we wrap up, Rich, I also want to mention some of our other sponsors. We've got these folks called ViewBug that are helping us out. And with ViewBug, we are running a $10,000 photo contest. That's right, a $10,000 photo contest. Actually, it's worth more than $10,000 now. We got a bunch of prizes. And you can go to viewbug.com for information. You don't have to pay anything to enter this contest, nor do you have to give up any rights. You can also enter other contests that they run there, post your pictures there. We appreciate their support, and also our good friends at Kelby Training, where you have several titles available. Kelby Training is a very, very, very cheap, affordable, easy way to learn a lot of the stuff we talk about here at Photofocus. And also want to remind you that Photofocus podcast is the 5th, the 15th, and the 25th of every month, now hosted by the world famous and somewhat infamous Richard Harrington.
Well, thank you, sir. And just a couple more things before we wrap up the show. I wanted to mention I came across a PC that I think even you might like, which was the HP Z1. It was basically looked like an iMac. except you flipped it open and it opened up and you could actually upgrade it. So it had 2 slots for 2 SSDs, a really fast graphics card, and it was pretty cool. It was basically for a lot of those folks who were deciding, we always talk about Mac stuff. I wanted to actually bring up that this seemed to be a good machine. I beat on it a little bit, tried doing some photo editing, some basic video editing. It was a nice machine, similar price point to the iMac. And, Windows 8's coming out. We'll see what happens.
When is Windows 8 coming out?
It's supposed to be this summer, is my understanding. It's already
Okay, well, when Windows 8 comes out,
and the 5 people adopt it.
and it's proven that it doesn't give you the blue screen of death, crash, deliver malware, or any of the other things that all previous versions of Windows have done, I promise to take an unbiased, open-minded look at this computer. However, that said,
you're not expecting that to happen.
I'm not expecting much out of Windows because, their motto over there at Microsoft is we're not happy till you're not happy.
Sure.
Anyway.
Well, two other quick things. Just, folks want an opportunity to learn. There's 2 conferences coming up that are being put on by some friends of ours. The first, could you talk a little bit about Skip's Summer School?
Oh, absolutely. I can talk about Skip Summer School. If you go to MEI500.com, MEI500.com, you will learn about a Skip Summer School, which is now in its 4th year. I'm proud to say that I've been on the faculty every year and will be again. This year, it's, however, in Chicago instead of Vegas as usual. And it starts Sunday, August 5th. It's an affordable program. It's a who's who of instructors. I mean, you got Clay Blackmore, Michelle Calentano, Tony Corbell, Jerry Guiones, Kevin Kubota, Bobby Lane, Roberto Valenzuela, Skip Cohen, Melissa Guiones, Catherine Hall. Then you've got Bob and Don Davis, Canon shooters Kevin and Claire Kubota, Vicky and Jed Toffer, Sal Sincata, and then this guy named me. And anyway, check that out at MEI500.com. And what's the other one, Rich?
Well, the other one is Scott Gelby actually has the Google Plus Photographers Conference coming up. That was sort of a quick announce, but it looks pretty interesting. It's being held on Google's campus. It's at gpluspc.com. And looked like an interesting idea for a conference. Basically,
I thought it was at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. It's in San Francisco, so it's close by. But that's right, Yerba Buena. But they do have some stuff on the campus too, I believe, and a lot of different things. It's got a bunch of different folks: Trey Ratcliffe, Catherine Hall, a whole bunch of other folks, Scott Kelby, and Matt Kloskowski from Kelby Training, RC Concepcion. But it looks like a nice collection of instructors, as well as a whole bunch of stuff on sort of the sharing of photos and using things online and building an audience, by sharing your images online. So it looks interesting. That's coming up, and it's going to be in May 22nd to 23rd. So it's not that far away. A real quick announce. Not that many shows launch that quickly, although if anybody could pull it off, Scott can pull it off. So.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I wasn't invited, probably because I don't know a lot about Google Plus, huh?
We need a Twitter photo conference, don't we?
Yeah, I could do okay at that one.
So that's gpluspc.com. So a lot of good learning opportunities, new software coming out, lots of things to catch up on. We've been posting some Photoshop CS6 tutorials to the Photofocus blog, and I've got new ones going up there this week since there'll be the announcement. If you do want to get hands-on with Photoshop, it's going to be a couple of weeks before the whole Creative Suite ships, but you could still download the public beta if you go to labs.adobe.com. And so Photoshop lets you get hands-on now. The rest of the software will be shipping really soon.
All right, man. Well, that sounds like fun. I got to tell you, I sure am enjoying it. I've been using it almost every day, and I've not been a big Photoshop user the last few years. I've been able to accomplish 95% of what I've done in Aperture, but there's some new tools in Photoshop that are tempting me back.
And I'm actually right there with you, though. Of course, if all things point towards rumors, Apple can't be that far away. So it'll be interesting to see how the war of digital photography heats up. Well, thank you guys all for joining us. If you want to find out more, be sure to head over to photofocus.com. There's a ton of great articles over there, as well as resources. And we always welcome suggestions and comments on the show. I'd like to thank you for joining me. And also, Scott, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter, Scott Bourne, ScottBourne, and also over at scottbourne.com. I'm starting to try to post a picture almost every day, trying to do an experiment there. And if you search my name on Google+, I am there. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, but I'm there.
Great. And I'm available on social media under Red Pixel. That's RHEDPIXEL. For Photofocus, my name's Rich Harrington. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and be sure to come back in 10 days for the next episode.